Hello, everyone, and welcome to Meet the Authors Women of Mystery. Thank you so much for joining us today. And if you're watching the replay, thank you for watching it after we're live. This project was made possible in part by the Institute of Museum and Library Science Services. Today's moderator is going to be Kellye Garrett, so I'm going to introduce her real quick and let her take over. Kellye Garrett's Hollywood Homicide about a semi-famous mega-broke Black actress won the Anthony, Agatha, Lefty, and Ippy for Best First Novel. It's also one of BookBub's top 100 crime novels of all time. The second book, Hollywood Ending, was featured on the Today Show's Best Summer Reads of 2019 and was nominated for both Anthony and Lefty Awards. She serves on Sisters in Crime's National Board and is co-founder of Crime Writers of Color. Her next project is an Own Voices domestic suspense novel about a woman looking into the overdose death of a one-time reality star found within blocks of her house, her own estranged younger sister. So please welcome to Orange County Library System, Kellye Garrett.
Hello, everybody. Hi, Cedar. How are you?
Good. How are you? I'm having trouble pronouncing words today, apparently.
Okay. You know how to say my name. I know that.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and let you take over and introduce our other guests today.
Right, sure. So first, I want to thank the Orange County Library System for having us today. And Sarah, I know they're the one that put it together, so thank you for that. So I'm going to introduce our panel, which is an amazing group of women and just really talented authors. So first, we have Tori Eldridge, who is the best-selling author of the Lily Wong series, which includes The Ninja Daughter, The Ninja's Blade, and the upcoming The Ninja Betrayed, which comes out in September. And her series has been nominated for the Anthony, Lefty, McAdie Awards for Best First Novel, was named one of 2019 Best Mystery Books of the Year by the South Florida Sun Sentinel, and awarded 2019 Thriller Book of the Year by Authors on the Air Global Radio Network. So welcome, Tori. I'm so happy you're here.
Oh, me too. And so fun to hang with you, Kellye.
I know. We're just a cool group today. So next, after Tori, we have Susan Elia McNeal, who is the New York Times bestselling author of the Maggie Hope mysteries. She won the Barry Award and has been nominated for the Edgar, the McCavity, the Agatha, the Left Coast Crime, the Dillis, and the ITW Thriller Awards. She lives in Brooklyn, New York with her husband and son. Hi, Susan.
Hi.
Tori, how are you doing?
Kellye. Good. How are you?
Good. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. And so next we have Amy Gentry, who is the author of the feminist thrillers Good as Gone, Last Woman Standing, and Bad Habits, as well as Boys for Pele, a book of music criticism in the 33 1/3 series. Her book reviews and essays have appeared in numerous outlets, including the Chicago Tribune, Salon, the Paris Review, the Los Angeles Review of Books, and the Austin Chronicle. Hi, Amy. How are you?
Hi, Kellye. I'm great. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
I'm so happy you're here. So finally, we have Elizabeth Little, and she is the Los Angeles Times bestselling author of Dear Daughter and Pretty as a Picture. She won the Strand Critics Award for Best First Novel and was nominated for the McCavity, Barry, and John Creasy New Blood Dagger Awards. She lives in Los Angeles with her family. Hi, Liz.
Hi.
How you doing? Where's your cat at? I feel like we should introduce your cat.
Yeah, my cat's just at my feet. He'll be up on the desk.
Okay.
Soon enough.
As long as he makes an appearance.
Time to time. Yeah.
He's like a surprise guest later on. So there's just a bunch of topics I want to talk about. And of course, I wanted to also let the audience, ask questions, since it's such a great diverse panel that we have today, because we all write very different things, from lighter books to more serious books, historical to contemporary. So I want to let's start off in the beginning. Do you guys remember the first mystery that you read and what it was you loved about it? And so I know a lot of people love Nancy Drew, but so for me, I actually loved Encyclopedia Brown first. And that was the first time. And, you read, hopefully everyone's read Encyclopedia Brown, but it's really short stories. And at the end, you have to actually try to guess what happened. And so that's what really got me hooked and connected on mysteries. And then a little bit later, I found cozy mysteries like Joan Hess. So whoever wants to go first, what was that, the first mystery that made you fall in love with the genre?
Well, for me, I'm sorry, it's a cliche, but Nancy Drew. And you know what? I was thinking about this, and I realized that a friend of mine had basically a whole library of Nancy Drews under the stairs. There was a bookcase under the stairs. And I thought, what a great mystery title, The Bookcase Under the Stairs. But yeah, Nancy.
What about you?
That's so funny, because I was thinking about I was also Nancy Drew. And I was sort of thinking about like the determination of like what kind of mystery writers we become based on like what we were first exposed to. But my when I was little, the home daycare where I was, she had the full collection of Nancy Drews in a bookcase under the stairs.
I see.
Oh my gosh.
So cool.
Yeah, and it was all like the old, like the original hardcovers with like the yellow binding. But yeah, that's sort of where I got my start too. But I wonder if like if I had Encyclopedia Brown there, how, you know, where might I be differently right now?
I definitely read Nancy Drew and Encyclopedia Brown. I don't know how. They were just around in the house somehow. And I loved them both, but I didn't. The thing that I remember most is this weird book that came out of nowhere called Spider Doll. And I was trying to find it later. My mom used to just go to I think yard sales and just buy like books by the ton, and she didn't really, for like 99 cents each, and she didn't look at them, you know, she just gave them to us. And Spider Doll was this real sick, like kind of thriller. There's like a doll, like there's like a plot involved. It's a kid's book, but it's like a thriller where she gets kidnapped at some point. But I remember the image on the front was this like little Bo Peep doll with like a big spider like attached to it, and that's like the central that's like the central thing in the book. It's like where they hide the gemstone or something. It's like it's not a real spider, it's like a part of the doll. Anyway, I don't remember anything about the plot, but I was like sort of obsessed with like being scared of that book. And also the Edward Gorey books were really big with me. I mean, those are sort of supernatural mysteries, but I think it's fair to say that things that were like a little more creepy and like disturbing would stick in my mind more than, because I wasn't good at solving the encyclopedia. Like I never knew the end. I was really bad at puzzles of all sorts.
That's funny. You know, I don't have one that really just like jumps out, especially in the genre, but Hercule Poirot. For some reason, I remember, you know, getting started on that and reading a whole bunch. I can't remember which ones they were, but I think that was probably, you know, the entry to mystery.
I think the interesting thing to me about Nancy Drew is that I grew up in the 80s, you know, and so that was they would do updates of the book. So that was the Nancy Drew that I saw, and she was like really cool, and she always was like really blonde and skinny and like in her bikini and like the cover with her Mustang and her hot boyfriend. So I think that's probably also the reason why I never really read her. I just never identified with her, whereas Encyclopedia Brown was like this geeky kid, you know, and I'm like, I kind of understood who liked to read and wore glasses, and I was like, oh, I connect with that a little bit more than this beautiful blonde lady who just seems to have everything going on. So
yeah, 1980s Nancy Drew was the whole thing.
Yeah, I should have probably tried some earlier ones, because yeah, cool Nancy was not for me.
She always had she's like good at every sport. I didn't identify with her either because she wins every single sport.
Yeah.
Like the beginning of every book, she's like skiing and she wins the skiing, or she's like doing a boat race and she wins the boat race. And she's got this like perfect father, you know. It's like, yeah, I mean, I kind of was like with you, Kellye. I was a little bit like, I don't know. I think you know, identify more with this like her like weird friends that never get to do anything.
What's her friend?
Yeah, you're
Beth
and George. Yeah, and like I was a George. Like I feel like anyone who identifies with Nancy is a psychopath. Like normal people identify with Beth and George because they're like actual like characters. Yeah, Nancy's just like way too perfect. My mom loved Nancy, and so this should. That's a good data point for those of you who know mom.
Oh my gosh. Okay, on that note, so I think one of the cool things about this panel is that we all come from different genres. So I wanted to kind of know what drew you to what you write, and how long did it take you to get overnight success? So when you say it, can you also just remind us what your genre is? So I'll go first. I started off writing really lighter weight mysteries, and it's because I have a very overactive imagination. And so unlike Amy, like Spider Doll, just the title of it, I would not want to read that, you know. And there was actually a James Patterson book I read like 20 years ago that had such a disturbing scene in it that I still think about it and I can't read James Patterson. since that. So it was like, if you liked mysteries, but you didn't want to deal with torture and serial killers and rapists, that's where cozies and lighter weight mysteries came in. They're kind of more beach reads. And so that's why was what drew me to writing the lighter weight mystery. So I'm also curious, like, what drew you guys to your genres? And also, like I said, a little bit about your journeys. Tori, you look like you...
Well, that's, it's an interesting question. I actually didn't start with the idea of writing a mystery. So my series, the Lily Wong series, is a mystery thriller series. A lot of action. It's about a Chinese, Norwegian, modern day ninja in Los Angeles, very own voices, right? But when I wrote that, I had already been writing something that was very exotic, kind of literary fiction, dark, magical realism. It's why I joined the Horror Writers Association, why I joined the Thriller Writers. It was because of that, right? So then I started writing a bunch of short stories, and a lot of those were also had this kind of horror, thriller, suspense. Some even had a supernatural quality. One was kind of literary in it. And as I was doing that, that's when I wanted to write this Lily Wong character. She came out of the first short story that I wrote. And so that one was very clearly mystery thriller. I wanted a complex mystery. I wanted action. I'm a martial artist, so I wanted to, give that authentic look at modern day ninja. And then I wanted to bring in my heritage. So there's that whole Chinese Norwegian family dynamic thing. So it's kind of interesting that I fell into it because of the story I wanted to write. And after it sold, it sold to a diversity-focused crime fiction imprint of Polis Books. And I went, this is crime fiction. Oh, and that opened up a whole new world for me and a community. So that's how I came to it.
Yeah, I had a similar story as Tori in that I didn't think I was writing a crime book when I started Good as Gone, which was my first novel. I was in a phase where I was trying to figure my life out. And I ended up in this writing group for people writing their first novels. And I just sort of dredged up this idea that I had 10 or 11 years back. And it was after, I had the idea after the Elizabeth Smart kidnapping. Yeah. And for various reasons, I was very compelled by that story, but I didn't really read a lot of mystery, especially at the time back then when I had the idea. So I thought of it as this sort of family drama where this girl comes back and where the real emotional center of the story is between this mom who's sort of doubting her daughter, her now grown daughter, and sort of as a metaphor for this mother-daughter relationship. And I started writing it in this group and got quite a ways into it before I realized that when there's kidnapping and dead bodies, actually there's a genre for that.
The dead body genre.
Yeah. And it was kind of like you, Tori. I kind of felt like it opened up a whole world for me. It was good for the book. I think it's I got invited into this genre quickly and with open arms, but then it connected me to a community. And the more I began to learn about the genre, now I feel really steeped in it. And it feels like somewhere I always belonged, but just didn't know it.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I can go to the next one.
Yeah, I'm trying to think how it happened. I mean, a large part of how it happened is I was really sick of writing nonfiction. So the first half of my career, I wrote narrative nonfiction, and I was finishing my second book. And I was deep in the end notes, which were 50 pages of end notes. And I remember correcting some very small research error I'd made. It was a transcription from a Norwegian American newspaper. And I'd mistranscribed something. And I had this spike of panic because I was if I get this wrong, my career's could be over, which I don't think was true, but that's a separate issue. But anyway, so I was working on these just endless endnotes, and I was just like, I'm sick of facts. I'm just like so sick of trying to get it right, and I'm so sick of like, I would just like to make some stuff up for a while. And that's really what precipitated my move into fiction. My agent was horrified because she's like, we don't know you can write fiction at all. You have no like.
Well, you showed her. You showed her.
So that's how I got into fiction. And then I think it's similar to what everyone's saying. It's like for my first novel, Dear Daughter, it turned out that, I've always loved mysteries. So I think I probably had a sense that there were going to be mystery tropes that I was going to play with. But ultimately it was like a character that came to me. And then what interested me about that character turned out to be quite murdery.
Can you tell us about her really quickly?
Yeah, sure. So Dear Daughter is my first novel, and the main character is a woman named Jane Jenkins, who I sort of refer to as like Paris Hilton meets Hercule Poirot. I was really interested in sort of like what was then sort of early influencer culture and sort of this sort of like celebutante culture in Los Angeles, and just how media narrative played with individual identity creation. And then one night I was just listening, I think I was on my phone. I think back then I had a phone. And I got to see it in Breaking News Alert that Amanda Knox had been released from prison in Italy. And that was kind of the real thing that triggered me, because I like stayed up half the night thinking like, what do you do? Like what like practically, like I love thinking about these kind of big premises, but on like a really granular practical level. I was like, do you come back? Do you start do you like create a new identity? Do you lean into the identity you have? Like, how do you construct yourself when there's so many stories about you? And so that's how I got Dear Daughter.
Anyone else?
Yeah, my story is kind of odd, or at least different, because I have to thank the Muppets, which is like not your usual intro into mystery, but my husband was doing this role called Bear in the Big Blue House, and it was really popular on Disney Channel and then Disney Channel UK. So I got to go with him to London for, I don't know, like 6 weeks, I think. And I ended up at the War Rooms, which is where Churchill and his crew fought World War II. And it was just such a transformative experience. It was a complete catalyst because you walk, it's an underground bunker. It's bomb-proof, supposedly. And, you're walking the same corridors that they all did. The lighting is the same. The atmosphere is the same. The little push pins in the maps are the same as when they like won the war, shut the door, and like never to return. So there's a real time capsule element to that. And that just, it was so profound. I knew I had to write about it.
I think that's kind of goes to my next question, which I think you guys kind of alluded to or kind of answered. But I always think for me about moments of when I'm like living through history. And I think a good example, obviously, this is not me, but for older people, it's like, where were you when Kennedy was shot? And I think when I think about what's going to be in history books in my life, I think about 9/11. I think about Obama winning the presidency. And I think about the pandemic in 2020. Also we had Black Lives Matter. We had such big things happen this past year. So I'm curious, and I said you guys kind of already talked about this, a couple of you, about like what ways real life events have crept into your writing. It can even be more subtle, if at all. And then my follow-up to that is, do you plan to address current issues? Obviously, Susan, not you, but
I am actually.
Then I can't wait to hear your answer. Including the pandemic, in your book. So do you want to go first, Susan?
Oh, sure. So first of all, Mr. Churchill's secretary was really influenced by 9/11, although I never knew it. Like a lot of the book is about saving St. Paul's Cathedral from being bombed. Okay. And it wasn't until I think my husband read it. He was like, that must have felt really good to write. I said, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, you got to save a building from coming down. I was like, wow. Like I never thought of that. But it's interesting. Like, so the latest book I've been working on is called The Hollywood Spy, and it's set in Los Angeles in 1943. And history doesn't repeat, but it does rhyme. And in the summer of 1943 in Los Angeles, there were the Zoot Suit riots. There were race riots in Detroit. There were riots in Harlem. There were some riots in Georgia and Texas. I mean, the U.S. was in a really bad place. And so that was happening historically, but then having the BLM happen and all the protests here in New York, and my husband is Black, and it definitely found its way into my book.
I think one thing that's great about that is that you kind of showing that, like you said, it rhymes. And I think a lot of people think with things, especially with race, that like, oh, this has never happened. Like, this is new.
Oh,
and
God,
it's like, no, it's not
no,
new. So I'm glad that you guys are kind of showing that with your book, Susan. So anyone else?
Great, but I just want to put in a plug for that book because I just got an early copy, lucky me, and started to read it, and it's so good.
I got one too. That's next. I have to do one more book first. I'm so excited. So anyone else?
The best part of the job.
I'm blushed.
Yeah, I'd have to say that my books definitely do reflect what's going on. I mean, Lily is a warrior protector. She works for a women's shelter. And so she's helping women and children in need. And so there's, in the first book, The Ninja Daughter, it really had a lot of tones, to do with the Me Too era. Library Journal even pointed that out. They called her a heroine for the Me Too era. And I was really happy about that because Lily really focuses on crimes against women and crimes against children. And in the second book, The Ninja's Blade, it does a deep dive into the commercial sex trafficking of youth in Los Angeles. So again, that's in there. And all of the books are, really involving diverse communities, not just Lily's own Hong Konger immigrant and, her father's from, North Dakota, Norwegian, not just her ethnic community, but we're in Los Angeles. And I mean, there are 400 languages spoken here. So there are a lot of, these, really exploring other communities and making sure that that's represented. That's really important to me. And in the third book, I take Lily and her mother to Hong Kong in the height of the 2019 pro-democracy demonstrations. And of course, we know right now, that, Hong Kong is going through a whole bunch of, trouble now with China, and we see where that's going. And so I found it very interesting. The book comes out September 14th, and I just finished the editorial notes, the revisions now. And I found it very interesting to write and very interesting for me to read back. Seeing Lily in the middle of these protests and dealing with these things and the characters in it, their concerns for where this may lead from the point of view of reading it as a person in 2021, where you actually see where things are going. And of course, this is very important to me because my daughter-in-law is a Hong Konger. Her family is from Hong Kong. She was born and raised there. And that was serendipitous because I didn't, my son didn't meet her until I had already started writing the Lily Wong series. So it was just one of those weird things of fiction reflecting life, my life, and then my life end up mirroring my fiction.
I think to me that's the interesting thing about the pandemic and trying to figure out, because my work in progress is a book that takes place in current times, but it's based on something that happened 2 years ago. And so with the pandemic, I didn't want to cover it. So I just set the book in 2019 and the thing takes place in 2017. I think to me, that's the tricky thing about the pandemic is because we're in it, we don't know where it's going to go, and so like to reflect and to know. So I think maybe that's also why I don't want to write about the pandemic right now, because I don't know what's going to happen, especially last year in 2020, we really didn't know.
Yeah. Here's the thing. Yeah. Before the Lily Wong book sold, I was halfway through writing a dystopian thriller set in an antimicrobial resistant future.
Wow.
And so I didn't have the time to get back to finishing it until I had finished writing the second Lily Wong book. So I got back to writing the second half of this dystopian thriller in January 2020. And so I'm writing, and things are cropping up in the news.
I'm going to blame you for this.
I'm writing it, and it's appearing, and I'm going,
yeah, it's your fault. Let's just blame Tori. She's
I was going to be like, yeah, are you a witch, Tori?
Not my fault. Not my fault.
I don't want to spoil it, but hopefully it ends well. The book ends good.
I kind of started accidentally writing a pandemic book, which I started before the pandemic, but like hoping it would be my next book too, but it turned into like it's actually a horror novel, or that was my idea writing it, and it's set in a lake house, and it's there's a woman who's like an artist who goes to this lake house to be alone and do her work, and over the course of this book, like more people started arriving, and I felt this while I was writing it, I mean trying to write like little bits and pieces during the pandemic. We have a 3-year-old, and which is why I'm like constantly at a lot of loose ends all the time now. And so we had the 3-year-old home for the pandemic, and we're all in quarantine together in our like tiny house. And I think there was just something coming out there, writing about this woman like desperate to get to her art and like getting interrupted over and over and over again. Of course, like a monster is going to start killing people. Right? That was kind of like my feeling, but yeah. I think the events of, I think a lot of writers I know kind of started writing books that became Me Too books without that were coming out like right after the Me Too thing started, or like that were already deep in draft by the time the Me Too thing started becoming a thing. And I think that's something that happens a lot, actually. I think that things are in the air and we feel them. And yeah, I mean, all of my books have had some element of like reality to them, or a basis in either my experience or something ripped from the headlines. And my recent one, Bad Habits, is literally set in a grad program similar to the one that I went to. And writing it, one of the challenges of writing it and of writing everything that I try to write is that I'm trying to capture like a structural slice, not just an individual's experience, but also the kind of structural forces that are causing problems, not just for the main character, but also for like the people around her that might be from more marginalized communities. So that's kind of something I've been struggling with in the thriller form since I started writing it, because I think we think of novels as this very individualistic arc where like one person faces struggles that they overcome. At least that's like the model that we've all internalized to a large degree from Western novel narrative theory. And I think I'm constantly trying and failing, I think, but like hopefully failing in an interesting way, to find ways to kind of like get at that like structural slice at the same time as I am really interested in the psychology of the main character. So that became a long answer. Next question.
All right. So we're gonna open it up to audience questions. So if you have a question, please put it in comments, and Sarah and Marianne will hopefully get them to us. But I still have my own questions as well. So I want to talk a little bit about kind of like insider writery stuff. So Amy Cedar Clarke, who is a debut author, I think her book Girl 11 comes out later this year, had this interesting thread on Twitter, I think last month, about how readers confuse twists and reveals. And, to me, twists are such a huge part of our genre, especially, if you write, traditional mysteries, or if you write psychological suspense, especially, so I'm curious if you guys think there's a difference, and if you think if you're more of a reveal writer or a twist writer. And then I had also, if you have any books with like what's your favorite book with a really great twist? And so according to Amy, a twist is something you don't see coming, and a reveal is something that you're building to from the first page.
I kind of teach them as the same thing. When I'm teaching, I teach twists as reveals when I'm teaching like a class on authors and suspense. I think the best twist in literature is Pride and Prejudice, when Darcy turns out to be great instead of horrible. and it's the groundwork is laid, but the author Jane Austen has expertly hidden it from you and from the main character, because you're focalized in her point of view for the reading of the letter and such. So yeah, that's I by the way, Amy Cedar Clarke's book is also brilliant, and I highly recommend it. I'm super excited to see it come out. But I kind of think that a twist where you can't go back and find the clues is an unsatisfying twist for a reader. Yeah. So I kind of feel like, to me anyway, I find them bleeding into each other. But I'm curious what other people think.
Well, I started writing in screenplays. That was, so I tend to be, very visual, and I use that kind of a structure. I write in a 4-act structure. And so, that laying of the breadcrumbs and paying it off, that's a big deal with me. Like you, if you're throwing something in out of the blue and there was nothing to suggest that or lay a ground for it, I'm like, so now there's an alien in 2020 Los Angeles. Say what? I thought we were reading, this other thing. So I'm not real keen about that, but I love it when things are artfully just laid out and you don't even realize it. You don't even realize that's going to be a thing. Sometimes you do, but sometimes you don't. And then it just happens. And then, so to me, that can be very revealy, where it's just like, whoa, or like you said, the protagonist becomes the villain and you're like, wow, or the other way around. But the twisting, for me, I like turning points. I like them, in the middle and the end of each of those 4 acts, at least, where you think you're going this way and something happens and you're like, whoa, now we're going this way. Oh, nope. We thought it was great. Nope, it's terrible. And so for me, those are the kind of twisty, turny things that keep that page turning and keep that pace going. And if you want a suggestion, boy, Hank Felipe Ryan's The First to Lie. Okay, yeah, that's got some twists in it, just constantly.
I think Vanessa Lilly's first book, I'm blanking on the title. I think the ending of her
Little
book
Voices.
Little Voices. I think the ending of that book to me is a reveal, but it's a really good reveal because it makes you want to go back and reread the book. Rachel Hazel Hall, her current one, which is like up for so many awards and now she's gone, has a really great ending to it, which I guess probably might be more of a reveal, but again, it also makes you want to go back and reread the book and like see it. Like, what, now that I know this answer, I want to go back and see how they laid it out. To me, that's like what a really good reveal is too. Yeah. I think the twist is also, I think they're both the same. If it's really good, you're like, your mouth is wide open. You're like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened. But it makes sense. That's the thing, like you said, it has to make sense. So anyone else want to chime in before I go to the next question?
I was going to say that I agree. For me, a successful twist is one that basically creates a second book out of the same book, right? It means you can go back and reread and have a completely different experience. So it's sort of like a 2-for-1 thing, which I dig. It's not what I can do necessarily, but like and I think it's really hard to do well. I find the insistence or the kind of like, top-down urging that we sometimes get from our editors, like make it more twisty. I find that really stressful because that's just not how I write. Like if I think I do twists, but my twists are always in the premise of the book. So for me, the thing that I'm twisting is like a baseline, either trope or assumption. Like there's something going in that's really baked into the book that's a little bit different than usual. And so that kind of makes everything a little bit uncertain, even though you're still in a genre that you recognize and you still have the usual narrative rhythm to it. You know that the world is just different enough that maybe not everyone's as safe as they would be in another book or something like that. So for me, a twist is really in the conception of the book.
Yeah, I think that's the tricky thing. I think you're right. Like now with the genre, ever since Gone Girl, I feel like people expect to be like they want to be shocked, but they've read, especially if you read so much of the genre, it's hard to shock people, and it's the expectations are so high with like
mystery writers are so Yeah, mystery writers are so smart and they're so well read, right? Like
the readers,
mystery, like big mystery fans are like, they can rattle off all of these titles and all, and be like, oh, this plot device was used in this Agatha Christie. And so like, I kind of approach it as like, I'm not going to fool these people. They're smarter than I am. So either I can give them something that they guess, but then have it execute it in the most satisfying way possible. But the problem is then the marketing, right? Because like something I've seen is when the marketing is like twisty, and then the reader, and then for the reader, they're just like, no, it's just exactly. And then if it doesn't match their experience of it, then they get angry. Whereas if the marketing had just initially been like, it's not that surprising, but it's quite compelling. Like you don't have that surprising to be compelling.
But would they ever have bought it? I struggle with this too. But I'm like, honestly, if my publisher wants to fool the readers, like I'm not endorsing this. I would prefer them to represent it like honestly to my audience. But I always think, every pissed off reader is someone who read my book, which is amazing. Like, what a nice thing for them to do. I'm sorry it was unpleasant for them, genuinely. but how nice that they read it though.
That would be an interesting thing. Like what would the like brutally realistic description of your book be? Like if publishing weren't trying to make us all, and like probably too many jokes, but
you'll laugh. So I want to know about the book that Tori mentioned. Oh yeah.
The book the twisty one is Hank Felipe Ryan's The First Two Lie. Yeah, Liv Constantine. Their books are very. If you want a book that I almost feel like it's their objective, to just end this book in a way that you had no idea what's going on. So you can check out Liv Constantine's books too.
Is it Greer McHenrick's their first book, The Wife,
The Wife Between Us?
The Wife Between Us. I thought that had a good reveal to it, and so there's certain books that definitely just have really good reveals, and it's sometimes you realize it early and it's just expectations, and so it's great. So anyone else? Let's go to the next question. So I want to know, what is the most random thing in your search history or your research file? And then what are you going to say to the FBI when they come to your house and ask about it?
I actually was on a BoucherCon panel with somebody who's a former FBI agent and someone who's a former CIA agent. And I told them I had searches for bomb making and anthrax. And they said, oh, you're definitely on a list. You are definitely on a list. Yeah. So, and my son, I don't know, my son who's 15 overheard me telling somebody this, and now he's convinced the FBI is going to break down our door at any moment. I have anthrax files. But anyway.
They haven't yet. They might come now.
I always look at my emails, which are so boring. Like I'm writing to my agent and I'm just like, yeah, day whatever of quarantine. I'm so bored. And whoever's assigned to me must be so bored.
So super exciting. Anyone else?
I just feel like everything that I search is suspicious, but there was one that got me a little worried. I was writing a novel set in Bali that had flashbacks to the 1966 Indonesian massacres. And I was looking up all of these images. I'm a very visual person, so I needed these images, and boy, did I come up with some images. They were horrible. But I really needed to set what was happening. And I remember clicking on some of those, and I got onto this thing that felt like some horrible, porny type thing. I'm like, get me out of here, get me out of here. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to have to be a little careful of this. And I thought, oh, I hope nobody's watching that one. So, so there are tons of things that would get me on a FBI watch list, but that one really scared me because I was like, I hope I'm not on anybody else's watch list.
If we're in jail, we're all in jail together, and we'll have a good time, guys. We'll be all in the search history jail for the FBI. Writing some good books. Anyone else?
I honestly think that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. No. Oh, I think that actually I'd probably get away with it just because I have such a robust search history for everything. Like everything that I want to know about, I like get so detail oriented, and that's like in terms of like what the physical effects of like a subdural hematoma are, but that's also like what broom and dustpan am I going to buy for my kitchen? Like there's no difference between those two things in my search history.
Yeah.
And so I like to think that the agents supervising me have just realized that I like specifics, right? It's not necessarily Exactly.
So funny.
I'm keeping quiet because I'm a terrible researcher. So it's like literally the last thing I do. When I do research, it's actually usually like I start out trying to research some period detail from 1992 or something. And then I end up like going down a rabbit hole with like the Olsen twins Instagram feed. And I'm like, now I just want to look at every outfit that they've ever worn on the red carpet together. And that's the kind of thing, that's why I turn off my internet while I'm writing. And I just try to like leave spaces for the stuff I don't know and come back and fill it in later. Because I am not a good researcher.
I always joke that I like, if you go to Wikipedia, they're always asking for money. Like I give them money because I go on Wikipedia.
Yeah.
Like, take the $5. Stop asking me. I'll be on here all day.
I get so protective of it. When teachers are like, don't use Wikipedia, I was like, Wikipedia is great. You don't know. Go into the talkback section. You'll learn so much.
What's the talkback section? Is it comments?
Oh, you can go in and you can look at the history of edits, and you can see the people who maintain the page arguing about whether or not to make those edits. And so there's like there's all this commentary basically you can read, like rabbinic commentary on the Torah is what like you can also get in Wikipedia. And it's fascinating.
Mystery writer, because I'm like, that's a character and that's a plot twist that you go in the comments of Wikipedia and there's some kind of clue patch there. Like, that's like right. It's immediately every time I hear some news, I immediately like go to that's a character, that's a plot twist, that's something like that's my brain just goes right to that. And I'm like, I want to write a Wikipedia arguing character. You guys, we're about to wrap it up in a few minutes, so if you have any questions, now's the time to ask in the comments. So I want to know what is like one thing you wish that people like readers and also your family knew about publishing? I think for me, the two things are one, that it takes a long time to get your book out. Like people like think if you announce it, they're like, oh, when's it coming out next week? Like, no, it's going to be a year. And I think the other thing is I wish people understood that we have no control if our book becomes a movie. Like everyone's like, you should make it a movie. And I'm like, yeah, I'm cool with that. I need Tony to do that. Not me. I can do it personally. So I'm curious, like, what do you guys wish like more readers knew about the inside, I guess, baseball of publishing?
Well, I have to say that whole movie thing cracks me up because I remember when I was an actress, my mother said, you should get on a soap opera. I'm like, okay, on it.
I'll
take care of that, Mom.
Okay. Yeah, they should.
The thing is, even if you have interest, like there's a movie interest. I mean, I've gone through this. I'm now on my third round of like people buying the rights. And so, I've had like 2 crash and burns and, you just have no control over it and things happen and
I can tell you that's for a fact because I'm married to a film and television producer, and I see projects that he's been involved with going on for decades before, if they get out, in there. And so, things crash and burn all the time. And he's constantly talking to a lot of, very hopeful authors who feel like, oh, great. You have the rights and things are going to happen. They're, getting back to him the next week. So anything? And it's just like, hon, how do I explain to you that this is a very long road, that
and it's
may
just
or may
it's a
not
house
pan
of
out.
cards. I feel like more than publishing, like the whole movie TV industry is this house of cards. And if one kind of pulls, then it just all crashes,
Indeed.
So, yeah.
I think if it comes to family, what would you want your family or your friends to know is that, I'm working all the time, all day, every day I'm working, and it's hard work, and it's not all fun and inspiration and, oh, I'm creating and this is just so fabulous. Sometimes it's like, and I think that would be nice, for them anyway. To know that, it's busy. It's busy.
Yeah.
It's busy.
That's really hard to convey, I think. You think you hit the nail on the head, Tori, because I was just thinking, I don't really want my friends and family to know anything about the publishing industry because I think they're just happier not knowing how the sausage is made. Like, I definitely enjoyed reading more, I think, before I knew how the sausage was made. And so I don't want them to know anything about the industry, but it would be nice because I do sometimes feel like, they must think I'm some terrible flake because, what do I do with my time all day? And it's like, oh God, what don't I do with my time? And there's never any off either. I was telling my husband, I have started when you're having an anxious time during your work, the thing is your work is probably kind of your life if, or at least your passion. And that's obviously wonderful. For your work to be your passion is a wonderful gift and blessing, but also it means that your passion is now your work. And, it's like the lines start to blur and it's hard to really turn totally off. So, yeah.
I once described it as...
I would settle...
Sorry. No, go
ahead. Go ahead. I would settle for just my family understanding that a work day, there is a work day that maybe they don't need to call me at 10:30 a.m. and then talk to me for an hour and a half. Maybe. I love my family very much, but when I see that caller ID that's mid-morning and I know I should send it to voicemail, but it's also we're all worried about our families right now, and we're all worried about our parents in particular. And then I pick up that phone, my whole day is gone. And I just know that if I had a job that my family could see the shape of a little bit more clearly, or maybe that's just a lie I tell myself. Maybe no matter what I did, they'd be calling me at 10:30. So. But yeah, I wish that work felt as worky to the outside. Yeah.
I think it's also tricky for me because, Susan, you're going to say something, so you go.
Oh, you know what? When people ask me what it's like, this is one thing I've come up with. It's like having a term paper due in perpetuity. You always have a term paper due, and it's that kind of pressure. Yeah.
Good.
That made my tummy feel bad.
Oh, sorry.
I'm actually just as a show of hands. So there's two different types of writers, although there's probably more than that. But there's plotters, who are people who outline first, and then there's pantsers, who they say fly by the seat of their pants and have a blank page and they just write. So show of hands, who's a plotter? It's the top row. All right, then you guys are. Was it Amy? Pantsers? Yes.
Yes, definitely.
You all scare me. You scare me. When you just start writing, you don't. I was listening to so many of my great, huge, best-selling friends. They have no idea what the character is going to do, how it's going to end, who done it. Y'all scare me.
Oh yeah, no.
Yeah.
I have a friend who's like a Valerie Burns being Burns. She's like, I get bored if I know what's going to happen. And to me, I'm afraid. That blank page scares me so much. I have 25 page outlines.
It's not just that I get bored. I do get bored like very easily, like a child. So I do like want to keep myself interested, but also I am better at thinking through writing than I am at thinking through thinking. So if I sit down and try to come up with an outline, which I have tried in earnest to do many times because it does make your life easier, the things I come up with are less interesting than the things that come out. And they also don't work because I will think I have it all outlined and then I go in to write it and I'm like, wait a minute. No, that's not enough or not the right thing. So the math doesn't add up anyway for me. And I almost write the first draft as like that becomes an outline. I make an outline from the first draft and then go back and like rewrite it to conform to that. And I have a few plot points. I mean, I think most of us, I don't know, Liz, you tell me, but most of us that are pantsers usually have like a few points, like a set piece in the middle, maybe thought out, or we think we know what the ending looks like, but we're not sure how to get there. So we have like a few points like plotted in advance, 2 or 3, and then it's just like learning how to get there is part of the process of writing the novel for me.
See, I think that's so interesting. I think best when I'm on my feet. And that may be because, I was such a kinetic person. I was a martial artist. I was a professional dancer. I like to be in movement. So when I'm working through a story, I'm usually on a hike, in the hills by myself with a phone dictating. And then I come home and then I transcribe everything that I dictate. And that gives me a little bit more. And then I go for another hike. And then that gives me more. And then another hike. I get a lot of hikes.
I need to do. I need to do that.
I just sit on the couch and like I go to sleep and I'm like, I'm gonna think of something while I'm sleeping. I just fall asleep. Like, yeah.
And then you wake up with all these great ideas.
And you forget about. I always like wake up in the middle of the night and I'm like, that's a great idea. And either it's really not, or it is and I forget about it. So I know someone who has like a pad of paper by their, I think it's Amina, like has a pad of paper by their bed. They can write their ideas down.
I keep a paper by my bed. It doesn't always make sense what I write.
I have an Apple Watch specifically for that, so I can just dictate notes.
That's cool.
Because I also I just my short-term memory is garbage, especially now. And so I just dictate anything I need to remember to this, and at the end of each day, I have like a part of my routine where I like transfer all of those notes into sort them. Because otherwise, I mean, I wouldn't catch anything.
I would love to get to a point.
Are you laughing at me? Are you making fun of me?
I'm just like picturing like Liz walking down the street, all of a sudden just being like talking to her. Like, what is she doing?
So much worse than that. It's like me in my garden, like digging up like onions, and then suddenly be like, the killer is.
Oh, you should totally do a YouTube video of this. This would be awesome. You need a series of videos for this for social media. I'm serious. I'm dead serious.
I would love to do a series of gardening videos for like how to grow beautiful dahlias and how to fix your second act problems.
That's amazing.
Would
watch.
We're about to wrap it up, but I think we might have one final question from the audience to help us. So do you guys feel that cozy mystery writers are given the same respect as other mystery writers? And I have strong opinions on this, so you guys can go first.
No, they aren't. Absolutely. I think it's a really like marginalized subgenre within crime fiction. And, a big part of that is because it's predominantly written by women and enjoyed by women. And it's a bummer because, when you look at so many of the classics of the genre, I mean, they're cozies. I mean, Agatha Christie, they're cozies, a whole bunch of them. And there's nothing like about the genre in itself that deserves scorn. And it's just because of the people writing it and the people who enjoy it. And it really bums me out, man.
I think so for me, I feel like you're right. It's definitely because it's men, and there's a notorious person who claims that men write literature and women don't. But my thing is, obviously, murder is the worst thing you could do to somebody is to kill them, and so cozies are lighter weight books about murder, and a lot of them are funny. So to make murder funny, that's to me harder than you see like this book. No offense to the men who write this book, but they'll come into the room at the end with like one gun and shoot like 20 million men and not even have a scratch on them. And I'm like, that's not hard. That's not hard.
Yeah.
A twist at the end of you laughing about a murder, that's hard. But of course, because it's women and it's lighter and you're laughing, it's not as serious as the Superman who screws every woman and kills every man in the book. So,
A
we're gonna
lighter
wrap it up.
doesn't mean easier.
No, it's not.
There's a big suspicion of pleasure too. It's weird, even though I think there's many forms of pleasure available in reading, and most of us read for pleasure on some level. But there's an idea that like masculine writing is writing that's like tough and rigorous and eschews pleasure, and that genres like, like romance or like cozies or, all of these genres that are more explicitly like about just, enjoyment and are like wearing it on its face are, I think, yes, are totally disrespected for that reason. And it's ridiculous because I think there's just as much wish fulfillment in a guy shooting up, perhaps more, in a guy shooting up a room full of 20 bad guys, It's just as ridiculous, actually, and less likely to happen than most cozies, so.
Yeah. Anyone else before we wrap it up? So before we wrap it up, I want you guys all to just give us a new author or even like an old time favorite author that they should check out from the library, and then we'll wrap it up. Tori, you want to go first?
Sure. I would say check out Angie Kim. She's got Miracle Creek, and she's coming out with Happiness Quotient. And if you don't know who S.A. Cosby is, you need to get on that yesterday. That would be Blacktop Wasteland and his new one, Razor Blade Tears.
Yeah.
I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that he has become and will continue to be one of the most significant African-American writers in this genre, and just basically period. So yeah, check him out. S.A. Cosby.
S.A. Cosby and Angie Kim. What, Susan?
And Angie Kim. I thought you said Angie Kim. Okay.
I'm always telling people to read The Secret History by Donna Tartt, which isn't really a mystery, but it's creepy and atmospheric, and there's a murder, so maybe it is a mystery. I don't know. And then I'm really keen to read White Ivy by Susie Yang. I've just heard amazing things. And I started Amy Gentry's new novel, and I had to put it down because I'm doing page proofs right now, but it's killing me that I'm not reading this book, Bad Education. So that's all I want to do is get back to reading her novel.
Bless.
Awesome. All right, so Liz?
Yeah, it's been a lighter reading year than usual for me. It's been harder to find books, but a book that still really stuck with me was a debut from last spring called Catherine House by Elizabeth Thomas, and it is set in it sort of like straddles a bunch of genre boundaries, sort of horror, fantasy, mystery, just creepy school though. So similar to Secret History, like in the wonderful tradition of creepy schools where things go terribly wrong. Another author that is not a new author, but I've only recently discovered is Soji Shimada, who's a Japanese author who's renowned for his locked room mysteries, and they're really diabolical. The most famous one is the Tokyo Zodiac Murders. And so anyone who really enjoys like the highly mechanical, like, it's like a beautiful little machine of a mystery with every gear working perfectly together. That's a really good one. And then something I'm looking forward to, I think that just looking at the cover makes me happy, is a book called Arsenic and Adobo by Mia Manansala. And it just has like, I follow her on Twitter. I know her a little bit, and she has like this incredible like wit and general vibe. And then it's a kitchen. It's a cozy mystery with food at the center. And I know that the way Mia writes it, it's going to be amazing. And the cover is just like, it warms me up from the inside just looking at it.
Yeah, I read it. It's really good. Just don't read it hungry. You'll be mad. Make sure you have a full stomach. You're going to be wanting to order Filipino food. And then Amy, you want to end us?
Yes, I have a book that I can't believe the title just flew out of my mind. It's just where I am right now. But the author is Nadia Bulkin. She's an Indonesian-American writer of horror stories, and it's her debut collection, I believe. And she's, I hope, working on a novel as we speak. Remember that I am the spider doll lover, so this is like a very dark collection of horror. Some of it, there's a little bit of Lovecraft pastiche or homage in it, but it's incredibly original. It's like some of the most original stories I've read. Each one has impeccable world building and is like several made me cry as well. They are the best horror stories. Hang on and I'll Google it right now in front of you. Yes, it's called She Said Destroy. I found it.
Oh, that's quick. She does a lot of research. She found that really quickly. Well, thank you guys. I want to thank Tori and Susan and Liz and Amy for having us. I want to thank the Orange County Library System for putting this together. I want to thank Sarah Fisk and Marianne for putting this together and working behind the scenes. It was such a great conversation. I love talking with you guys, and hopefully we can do it again. So bye, you guys.
Kellye. That was amazing moderation. Thanks,
Thank
Kellye.
you so much
Yeah.
for having me.
Thank you, Kellye.
Kellye.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to be the first to find out when we have new fun and informative videos for you. Orange County Library System is your place to learn, grow, connect.